What if I told you that the one tool you trust to predict a good fishing day is actually the reason you're missing the best bites? We're all guilty of it. We pull up the weather app, we look at that little number for barometric pressure, and we make a decision, go or no go. Well, today we're tackling the biggest sacred cow in fishing, barometric pressure. I'm going to show you exactly why that number is costing you fish and, more importantly, what you should be looking at instead. The truth is, the fish don't care about the pressure itself nearly as much as we think. They care about something else that happens at the same time, and most anglers get it completely backward. So before we dive in, let me know in the comments right now, do you check the barometer before every single trip? Yes or no? Let's see how many of us are stuck in the old ways. For generations, the rules have been passed down. It's fishing gospel taught to us by our fathers and grandfathers. High pressure, bright bluebird skies, tough fishing, stay home, falling pressure, clouds rolling in, an approaching front. That's the golden ticket that the fish are going to go on a feeding frenzy. It's so deeply ingrained in our minds that we don't even question it. We see guys packing up their gear and heading for the boat ramp the moment the sun comes out after a storm, grumbling about the pressure. It's a habit, a belief system that dictates our time on the water. We plan our precious fishing days around this single data point, convinced it's the key to success. But habits, especially the old ones, deserve to be challenged. Because what if this time-honored piece of wisdom isn't wisdom at all? What if it's just a convenient excuse for a slow day? Let's start with the classic belief. Falling pressure is king. The theory goes that as a storm front approaches, the atmospheric pressure drops. This change is supposedly felt by the fish, particularly through their swim bladder, a gas-filled organ that helps them control buoyancy. The idea is that this change signals an impending period of bad weather, where feeding will be difficult. So, in anticipation, fish go on a major feeding spree. It makes perfect sense on the surface, doesn't it? It's a simple cause and effect story. We've all experienced it. You're out on the water, the wind picks up, the sky darkens, and suddenly every cast gets hammered. You feel like a fishing genius. You timed it perfectly. You attribute all that success directly to that falling barometer. You go home and tell your buddies, man, the pressure was dropping and they were just chewing. This reinforces the belief, turning it from a theory into a hard fact in your mind. It becomes an unbreakable rule, but correlation isn't causation. Something else is happening that we're not giving enough credit to. Now let's talk about the dreaded high-pressure system. This is the angler's nemesis. The day after a cold front passes, the sky is crystal clear, there's no wind, and the sun is just beating down on the water. The barometer reading is high and stable. According to the legend, this is the worst possible time to fish. The theory here is that the high pressure pushes down on the water and, in turn, on the fish's swim bladder. This supposedly makes them feel bloated and uncomfortable, almost like a person with an upset stomach. They lose their appetite, become lethargic, and suspend in deep water or bury themselves in the thickest cover they can find. They get a classic case of lockjaw. So you spend hours on the water without a single bite, and the excuse is ready-made. The pressure was just too high. It's an easy out. It absolves us of any fault in our technique or location. It's not that we were using the wrong lure, it's that the fish physically couldn't bite. But think about it. Fish live their entire lives under the immense pressure of water, which is hundreds of times denser than air. Do a few millibars of atmospheric pressure really make that much of a difference to them? Here's the first crack in the myth's foundation. Fish are incredibly adaptable creatures. They live in an environment where pressure changes constantly just by them moving up or down in the water column. A bass moving from 20 feet of water up to 10 feet to chase a baitfish experiences a much more significant and rapid pressure change than any weather front could ever produce. They do this thousands of times throughout their lives. Their bodies, including their swim bladders, are designed to handle these adjustments. So, the idea that a slow, gradual change in atmospheric pressure over several hours or days is enough to completely shut them down seems a little far-fetched. It's like saying a person who can climb a mountain would be incapacitated by walking up a flight of stairs. The scale just doesn't add up. The fish are simply not as fragile and sensitive to these minor atmospheric shifts as the old-timers would have us believe. Their world is one of constant pressure fluctuation, and they are masters of adapting to it. The real trigger for their behavior has to be something more direct, something that tangibly changes their immediate environment. So if it's not the pressure itself, what is really happening during a low-pressure event? Let's paint the picture. A front is moving in. What do you see? The first thing is that the bright, sunny sky disappears. It gets cloudy, overcast, and dark. This is a massive change. The reduction in sunlight penetration is one of the most significant factors in fish behavior. Predatory fish like bass, walleye, and pike are ambush predators. They have an advantage in low light conditions. The reduced light breaks up their silhouette, making it harder for prey to spot them. This gives them the confidence to leave their heavy cover and roam more freely in search of a meal. They feel safer and more aggressive. They don't need to hide in the shadows anymore because the whole lake has become one big shadow. It's not that the pressure drop magically flipped a feed switch in their brain. It's that the changing light conditions created the perfect hunting environment for them. They're simply taking advantage of a tactical opportunity. The second thing that happens with an approaching front is wind. The wind picks up and it starts to churn the surface of the water. This is another huge factor that most people overlook, crediting the barometer instead. What does wind do? First, it further breaks up light penetration. The choppy surface scatters sunlight, adding to the low light conditions we just talked about. Second, and maybe more importantly, it positions the bait fish. Wind creates currents, and these currents push plankton toward the windy side of the lake. The bait fish follow the plankton, and the predator fish follow the bait fish. The wind essentially creates a moving buffet line. It concentrates the food source in predictable areas. So if you're fishing on a windy bank during a low-pressure system, you're not just fishing in good conditions, you're fishing where the dinner table has been set. The fish are active there because that's where the food is. Again, this has everything to do with the tangible effects of the wind and almost nothing to do with the invisible pressure in the air. Now let's re-examine those terrible, high-pressure bluebird sky days. The myth says the fish are uncomfortable and won't eat, but what's actually happening? The sun is high and bright, and the water is calm. In these conditions, there is maximum light penetration, the water is crystal clear. A predator fish, like a bass, is now extremely exposed. Its prey can see it coming from a mile away. It has lost its ambush advantage. So what does it do? It does the logical thing. It doesn't stop eating. It just changes how and where it eats. It retreats to the shadows. It tucks itself deep inside a weed bed, gets right up against a dock piling, or sits under a dense, overhanging tree. It's waiting to an easy meal to swim by its hiding spot. The fish are still willing to eat, but their strike zone becomes incredibly small. They aren't going to chase a lure 30 feet across an open flat. They might only be willing to move 6 inches to grab a meal that comes right to their doorstep. The fishing is tougher, not because the fish have lockjaw, but because they are holding in very specific, tight-to-cover locations. The challenge of high-pressure days isn't the fish's mood, it's our approach. Many anglers continue to fish the same way they would on an overcast day. They make long casts across open water with fast-moving baits. That's a recipe for failure. On these bright, calm days, you have to become a surgeon. You need to make precise, quiet presentations directly into the heart of the cover. This is when techniques like flipping a jig, pitching a soft plastic, or skipping a wacky rig under a dock shine. You have to put the bait right on the fish's nose. The anglers who complain about high pressure are often the ones who are unwilling to adapt their strategy. The ones who succeed are the ones who understand that the fish haven't stopped feeding. They've just changed their location. They've moved from the open dining room into the tight corners of the kitchen. You have to go in there and serve them their meal directly. Requires more patience and precision, but the fish are absolutely there to be caught. Let's consider another angle. The barometric pressure myth gives us a dangerous sense of false confidence or predetermined failure. Picture this. You wake up, the barometer is falling, and the forecast looks perfect. You head to the lake with sky-high expectations. You're already counting the fish you're going to catch. But when you get there, the bite is slow. What happens? You get frustrated. You start to doubt everything. It's supposed to be the perfect day. Why aren't they biting? This can lead to poor decision-making. You start changing lures every 5 minutes, moving spots frantically, and generally fishing without a plan. You are so confident in the barometer's prediction that you failed to do the real work of figuring out the pattern for that specific day. The perfect conditions actually became a mental handicap. Your expectations got in the way of your instincts and observations on the water. The fish don't read the same rule book we do, and even on a perfect day, you still have to put the puzzle together. The reverse is also true. Like, you look at the app and see high pressure. You decide to go fishing anyway, but in the back of your mind, you've already accepted defeat. You tell yourself, well, the fishing is going to be tough today, but it's better than being at work. You're not fully committed. You don't fish with the same intensity or focus. You make lazy casts. You don't bother retying your line after a snag. When you don't get a bite for an hour, you just shrug and say, yep, just like the forecast said, the high pressure becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You expected the fishing to be bad, so you fished badly, and the results confirmed your bias. You weren't hunting for fish, you were just passing the time. If you had gone out with the mindset that the fish was still catchable, but that you'd need a different strategy, your entire day could have turned out differently. The biggest barrier wasn't the pressure, it was the belief you carried with you to the boat ramp. Think about professional base tournaments. These guys fish in every condition imaginable. They don't get to pick their days. The tournament is scheduled and they have to go out and perform, whether it's a low-pressure front or a brutal, high-pressure post-frontal day. And guess what? Every single day, somebody brings a heavy bag of fish to the scales. Someone always figures them out. They don't just throw their hands up and say, the barometer is high, let's go home. They know that's not an option. Instead, they adapt. They slow down. They switch to finesse presentations. They spend hours dissecting a single piece of heavy cover. They understand that the fish are still in the lake and they still have to eat. They prove, week after week, that fish can be caught in any barometric pressure condition. If they can do it, why can't the average angler? The only difference is their mindset. They refuse to accept the easy excuse. They see tough conditions not as a roadblock, but as a puzzle to be solved. So what should you be looking at instead of the barometer? The single most important factor, day in and day out, is light conditions. More than pressure, more than temperature, light dictates where fish will position themselves and how actively they will feed. On dark, overcast or cloudy days, fish are more likely to be roaming and will chase moving baits. This is when crankbaits, spinnerbaits and topwater lures can be incredibly effective. They feel secure and are willing to travel farther to eat. On bright, sunny days, the opposite is true. The fish will relate very tightly to cover and shadows. They want an easy meal that comes to them. This is when you need to slow down and target specific objects. Docks, lay-down trees, weed lines, and even the shadow line from a steep bank become fish magnets. Your lure selection and presentation should be based on the amount of light, not the amount of pressure. Start thinking like a predator that uses light and shadow to its advantage, and you'll start thinking like a fish. Let me share a personal story. A few years ago, my buddy and I had a trip planned. The night before, a massive cold front blew through. We woke up to that classic post-frontal day, not a cloud in the sky, no wind, and the barometer had shot through the roof. My buddy called me and said, "Man, I don't know, it's going to be brutal, maybe we should just cancel." The old me would have agreed instantly, but I had been starting to question the pressure myth. I told him, "Nope, we're going. We just have to fish differently." We spent the entire day not making a single cast in open water. We focused exclusively on the darkest, nastiest cover we could find. We pitched heavy jigs into the heart of thick bushes and skipped senkos way back under the darkest parts of docks. It was slow, meticulous work, but by the end of the day we had boated over 20 keeper bass, including a 5-pounder. It was one of our best days of the year, on a day the rules said we shouldn't have even bothered leaving the house. That day was a revelation. It proved that the fish were there and they were willing to eat. We just had to deliver the meal to their doorstep. We saw other boats out there, guys chucking spinnerbaits across main lake points, and they weren't getting a sniff. They were probably heading home early, blaming the high pressure. The key wasn't some secret lure, it was the realization that the fish's address had changed. They had moved from their front yard into their living room, and we were the only ones knocking on the door. This is the power of ignoring the barometer and focusing on what's actually happening on the water. You open up so many more fishing days. Instead of having maybe 10 or 15 good days a year, according to the barometer, you suddenly have 50 or 60. You just have to be willing to change your tactics to match the conditions in front of you. Let's bring in some science. While fish can detect pressure changes, studies on their behavior are often inconclusive or contradictory. What is not inconclusive is their relationship with light and oxygen. For example, wind doesn't just create current, it also oxygenates the water. The churning action on the surface infuses oxygen into the upper layers of the water column, which can invigorate both baitfish and predators. During hot summer months, a windy day can be far more productive than a calm one, regardless of the barometric pressure, simply because the water quality and oxygen levels are better in the wind-blown areas. Fish are drawn to comfort and opportunity. Higher oxygen levels are comfortable. A concentrated supply of baitfish is an opportunity. These are tangible physical factors that directly influence a fish's decision to feed. A number representing air pressure is an abstract concept. Fish react to their immediate environment, not to a weather forecast. Another critical factor is water temperature stability. Fish are cold-blooded, meaning their metabolism is directly tied to the temperature of the water they live in. They prefer stable conditions. A major cold front often brings a drop in water temperature along with that spike in barometric pressure. It's very possible that the fish are sluggish not because of the pressure, but because the water temperature just dropped 5 or 10 degrees overnight. Their bodies literally slow down. It takes them a day or two to acclimate to the new, colder water. So you're out there the day after the front, the pressure is high, and the bite is tough. It's easy to blame the pressure. But the real culprit is likely the sudden temperature shock. The high pressure is just an accomplice, not the mastermind behind the crime. Once the water temperature stabilizes for a day or two, even if the pressure remains high, the bite will often pick back up significantly. So how do we turn this knowledge into a practical strategy? It's simple. You create a new checklist. When you're planning a trip, the barometer should be the last thing you look at, if you look at it at all. Your new number one factor is light and cloud cover. Is it going to be sunny or overcast? This will determine your general approach, fast and searching for cloudy days, or slow and targeted for sunny days. Your number two factor is wind. What's the speed and direction? This will tell you where the bait fish are likely to be pushed up against. A windy bank is almost always a great place to start. Your number three factor is recent weather history. Has a major front just passed? Did the water temperature take a big dive? If so, expect the fish to be a little sluggish and positioned in deeper, more stable water. These three things, light, wind, and temperature stability, give you a real, actionable game plan based on the direct environmental conditions that fish actually respond to. Let's break down a sunny, high-pressure day using the new strategy. Forget the pressure reading. You see sun in the forecast. Your brain should immediately think shadows and cover. Before you even get to the lake, you should be picturing where the best shadows will be. Think about which banks will be shaded in the morning versus the afternoon. Think about which docks are the largest and darkest. Think about where the thickest weed beds are. Your game plan is to methodically pick apart these high-percentage, shady areas. You'll rig up a couple of rods for close-quarters combat, a jig, a Texas rig, maybe a wacky rig. You're going to fish slowly and deliberately. You're not trying to cover water, you're trying to dissect cover. This is a targeted, surgical approach that is born from observing the light conditions, not from being discouraged by a pressure reading. It's a proactive plan, not a reactive excuse. Now let's plan for a cloudy, low-pressure day. Again, ignore the pressure itself. The forecast calls for clouds and wind. Your brain should immediately think, roaming fish, reaction baits. The fish have a security blanket of low light, so they'll be more spread out and willing to chase. This is the day to cover water. You'll tie on a spinnerbait, a crankbait, a chatterbait, or a topwater lure. Your game plan is to hit the wind-blown points and banks where the bait is being corralled. You'll keep the boat moving, making lots of casts to try and intersect with these active, hunting fish. You're fishing faster, looking for that aggressive reaction bite. See the difference? The plan is dictated by the tangible conditions, the clouds and the wind, which just so happen to occur during low-pressure systems. You are basing your strategy on the effect, not the supposed cause. This subtle shift in thinking makes all the difference in the world. The freedom in this is immense. You are no longer a slave to the barometer. You don't have to cancel trips or go into a day with a defeated attitude ever again. Every day on the water becomes a solvable puzzle. It empowers you as an angler. Instead of just hoping for the perfect conditions, you become an expert at adapting to the conditions you are given. You develop a deeper understanding of fish behavior and their relationship with their environment. You start paying more attention to the things that actually matter: the angle of the sun, the texture of the water's surface, the subtle changes in watercolor. You become a more observant and ultimately a more successful fisherman. You'll find yourself having great days when everyone else is at home complaining about the high pressure. You'll have the lake to yourself and you'll know exactly why the fish are where they are. That is a confidence that no weather app can give you. To be clear, I'm not saying there's absolutely zero connection. Major, rapid drops in pressure preceding a severe storm can and do seem to trigger a bite. But it's likely a part of a larger suite of triggers: darkening skies, increasing wind, and changing temperatures. The barometer is just one piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle. The mistake we've made for decades is looking at that one piece and thinking it's the whole picture. We've given it far too much power. It's time to take that power back. Trust your eyes and your instincts on the water more than you trust a number on a screen. Watch the bait fish, watch the birds, pay attention to the wind lanes on the water. These are the real-time indicators of what's happening in the fish's world. Let the barometer be a minor footnote in your fishing plan, not the headline. If you do that, I promise you will spend more time fishing and you will catch more fish. It's that simple. So let's wrap this up. We've been told our whole lives to worship the barometer, but we've seen today that it's mostly a myth. The real triggers for a fish's mood are the tangible things that come along with pressure changes, light levels, wind, and water temperature stability. The barometer doesn't make fish uncomfortable. Bright sun and calm water makes them cautious. The barometer doesn't tell fish to eat. Cloudy skies and wind give them the advantage to hunt. The most shocking takeaway for me is this: the barometer doesn't tell fish when to feed, it tells anglers when to stay home. And by staying home on those bad high-pressure days, you are leaving a lake full of catchable fish to the handful of anglers who know this secret. This simple shift in mindset can literally double the number of productive fishing days you have each year. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge the old ways. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now I have to ask you, what's the biggest fishing myth you've heard that turned out to be completely wrong? Drop it in the comments below. Let's get a great discussion going.